I think we are going to start unless Michail says that someone is still waiting. Okay, so firstly, hello all, thank you for such a big audience. And we are today going to speak about fair play regulations and best practices. This is a joint webinar together with Fair Play Commission and Arbiters Commission. And in order to save time, I think I will just introduce what is cheating and why do we fight it. First, I would like to ask whether you see my screen, like wave the hand if you do. Don't see it? You see it? Okay. Somewhat I do not hear anything. I'm hearing only myself. So I'm not sure whether I speak with a wall or with people. Okay, if you hear me and it is silence, I guess everything is fine. If not, maybe Konstantin or Klaus tell me something or react because I see you on my screen. So firstly, speaking about regulation, speaking about cheating, let me introduce myself. I am a chairperson of Fair Play Commission, and I will provide some brief introduction what is cheating and why do we fight it. Generally, we can speak about cheating in very broad terms, but I will try to be as short as possible. Basically, cheating in sport can be described as dangerous action by which other competitors are cheated in order to get material or immaterial benefit. And the concept of cheating is similar to the concept of foul play or unsportsmanlike behavior, though cheating is narrower because foul play means not only violation of sport rules, but the interference with the spirit of sport, that is, the principles of respect, tolerance, and equality. So graphical, it looks something like this, that cheating is narrower compared to unsportsmanlike behavior. And accordingly, cheating is more dangerous, and it is not so disputable whether it should be prohibited or not. Cheating basically is considered as detrimental to sports, while unsportsmanlike behavior is more a disputable concept, and sometimes it can be punished, sometimes not. And actually, the very fresh decision of Ethics and Disciplinary Commission, actually it is kind of a week old, drew a margin between cheating and sportsmanlike behavior in the context of fixed draws. Not to be too theoretical, I instantly provide the decision from Ethics Commission. And as we know, fixed draws is one of the most debatable concept within the chess world, and in legal terms, we can question whether it is cheating or not, whether it is tactics, strategy, or something that has to be punished. But quite good delimitation was provided by very recent decision by the Ethics Commission, and here it was said that there is an argument for regarding arranged draws as contrary to the quantitative aspect already before the start of the game, and the Ethics and Disciplinary Chamber does not, however, find arranged draws as unacceptable match fixing, primarily due to the fact that chess players are allowed under the rules of chess to propose and agree to a draw, admittedly only during the course of the game, and none of the parties whereby agree to lose the game. So in other words, Ethics and Disciplinary Commission did not say that fixed draws can be considered as cheatings. In other words, it is not here. It is here, but just the most dangerous forms of fixed draws can be equalized and put under the same footage as match fixing and accordingly as cheating. But to fulfill such a condition, something more than just fixing draw is needed. And one example then a fixed draw is considered as cheating is where one of the players is offered some kind of remuneration to agree to a draw. So there are situations where arranged draws may be in violation of the concept of sportsmanship and fair competition to such an extent that it would qualify as match fixing. In other words, getting back here, it was said bluntly that unsportsmanlike behavior, but when fixed draws involve monetary or any other advantage, it is close to match fixing, or it is match fixing, and thus it is cheating. So this is not only theoretical discussion, actually it is very practical, and there are many examples of cheating both inside and outside chess. For example, artificially making an injury in baseball, ball tampering, artificial foul in basketball, using computer assistants in chess games, fixing matches, etc. And there are less dangerous forms and more dangerous. Some are considered as tactics, some are considered as much more dangerous forms of unsportsmanlike behavior, but getting to present them in much more detail in the nearest future. But just to joining what is being told from sports law perspective, or from theoretical perspective, and from a regulation itself, it is important to know that basically our regulations speak about two forms of cheating, that is computer-assisted cheating and manipulation of chess competitions or match fixing. The names are a bit more elaborated, a bit more sophisticated. You can read it as here, like deliberate use of electronic device, or sandbagging, rating for fraud, or something like that. But basically, they all these definitions go into two fundamental forms of cheating that Fair Play Commission is dealing with, that is computer-assisted cheating and match fixing. And basically, computer-assisted cheating is considered so ambiguous as, for example, homeopathic doping or flopping in basketball or fixing draws so as to save energy. In other words, this graphical illustration applies more to such kind of behavior as fixed draw, but it does not apply to computer-assisted cheating because we cannot use computer at unsportsmanlike. It is always cheating, and it is always dangerous. So this form is much more proper while speaking about some kind of fixed draws or things that are disputable. But speaking about computer-assisted cheating, we speak usually just about detrimental effect, dangerousness, and cheating itself. Those who will be interested, I will send slides, and you will see what are the text, and then it would be more food for thought. Speaking about the reasons, actually, I will try not to speak too much. Actually, it is quite clear that usually we have some monetary advantage involved, or some kind of any other advantage, price, norm, title, etc., etc. Usually it's nothing metaphysical. We want some kind of reward, and we get this reward by illegal means. And again, graphically, it might be depicted as follows, where cheating brings a dishonest athlete to finish quicker and easier compared to the fair play. So fair play requires more work, more efforts, most efficient way to get to the finish with less tiring means. So graphically and economically, it can be depicted as a straight way, very, very straight way, while fair play is usually longer and harder way. That's why cheating is kind of prevalent. We do not have statistics, understandable. And sports results, actually, it was again provided by the very recent fresh decision. Dwell on that. Those who will want to have more information, you will get this on ethics and disciplinary decisions, and more or less it is all that I wanted to say. It is just one more graphical illustration where I wanted to point out that cheating in sports is a very broad phenomenon, and legally many legal liabilities can be applied. Usually we are in this triangle, in right upper triangle, but we should not be too much confident that the middle triangle is not applicable. And sometimes, especially in case of fixed draws, we are in the upper left triangle. That is, we can speak about lawfulness and tactical elements of sports. And from above, we have international documents, international politics, and international policy is kind of tough on cheating in sports. We have so-called zero tolerance politics, which says that cheating is detrimental and it can have to be criminalized. Harsh measures have to be proposed, and cases have to be investigated, and dishonest people have to be punished. So we have political dimension, we have criminal law dimension, a disciplinary law dimension, where we all are living and dwelling on that. And it is also, we should not forget that it is a very multifaceted issue, and at times we have to draw the margin between lawfulness and illegal acts, especially in case of match fixing. Probably this is all that I wanted to say. I will give a floor to Yuri Garrett, who will speak at length about our regulations and anti-cheating protection measures. If you have questions, we have the last part, questions and answers. So, or you can just put them on chat, even on private message, and I will try to react as far as I can. So for now, thank you for your attention.
Just a second to tell me it's not me, it's going to be Klaus, who is going to lead you through the anti-cheating regulations, and then I will briefly touch on the more practical aspect of the anti-cheating protection measures. So Klaus, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Salomeja. A warm welcome from my side. I'm very happy that I meet you online in this strange times. It's maybe the best way to meet. My part in this webinar is to tell you something about the anti-cheating regulations. It's a paper from 2018, but it's not so well known for some reasons. I want to start with a view in the past, how it all began. Maybe you remember that Feller case. It was during the Olympiad 2010 in Councillor. That led to a big discussion. It was not the only cheating case, but the most famous, to a big discussion about how to fight against cheating. Computers went stronger and stronger, and it was common sense in Fide and in the ACP that something has to be done, and that led to ask a working group to prepare a paper, and this paper, maybe you better know, is led to the anti-cheating guidelines. This paper was prepared in 2014, and it was online since some months ago on the Fide website as a part of the Fide handbook. And you find a lot of different things. It's, if you want to say, a collection of ideas, suggestions, demands, all concerning cheating in chess. And you find different parts. First, motives and definitions. Then you find something about new commission, which did not exist in 2014. You find something about anti-cheating measures. You will talk about that later. About complaints and investigation, that's my part. About sanctions, recommendation for arbiters, and some annexes. It's worth to read this paper if you have time, especially in the annex. It's described the method of Professor Reagan. This anti-cheating guidelines 2014 were approved by the presidential board, so we could start to work. First, we had an anti-cheating committee, and then in the General Assembly in Baku 2016, we were acknowledged as a normal commission of Fide, the called anti-cheating commission. What happened then? We had the feeling that this paper, this anti-cheating guidelines, is not specific because it's too much ideas, too much different ideas, and so we started to develop anti-cheating regulations. Well, these are rules now. based on the one part of, or two parts of the anti-cheating guidelines. This was approved by the General Assembly 2018 and is part of the Fide handbook now. The same General Assembly, something happened which I will never understand. Our commission went to Fair Play Commission. I don't know why, I cannot explain, but it is as it is. So now we are Fair Play Commission. And another important step was in the last General Assembly in Abu Dhabi some months ago, where the former Ethics Commission is now called Ethics and Disciplinary Commission and has more members and 2 chambers. So we have also an appeal chamber now. Of course, this is also meant for our cheating cases. The general structure is as follows. We have now called the Fair Play Commission with the chair, Salomeja, with secretary Yuri, some councillors, some members. And that has to be distinguished from the now Ethics and Disciplinary Commission, who makes the decisions. I will explain it later. And you have to know another wording. We have an investigatory chamber, now called investigatory panel, that has to do with the new Abu Dhabi decisions. And in the new rules about the constitution, you find also something called Fair Play Fact-Finding Committee. I don't know what it is in the moment, but we will find out in the future. Okay, let's go to more practical questions, and let's have a look in this anti-cheating regulations. Again, you find it on the Fide website under the Fide handbook, and also on our own commission's website. And it has 7 articles. It's not a very long paper. In the first article, you find something what cheating is. You heard the explanations from Salomeja. You find it there. So we have a definition of cheating, and it's important to know that it's not only the use of electronic devices. It's also manipulations, different kinds. Result manipulation, the Kenyan case, sandbagging, match fixing, rating fraud, false identity, and deliberate participation in fictitious tournaments or game. We have some investigation panels dealing with such accusation now in the moment. Important is also that not only cheating, but also attempt of cheating falls under the definition of cheating for us. And also very important, maybe some of you remember that Sandu case. We also said false accusation is also some kind of cheating and has to be punished. Okay, let's go to the next part, the jurisdiction. When is the Fair Play Commission allowed to make investigations? It's very clear, all cheating related matters, and we can make our investigations not only by following players, but also team captains, other supporting persons as organizers, arbiters, spectators, journalists, and others. we are dealing only with Fide-rated games. In the moment, you know, there are no, it's the next dot. And we are only dealing with over-the-board games. In the moment, you know, in the moment, chess is played online, and Fair Play Commission is discussing about a way, and it's a big problem, about a way also to deal with online games, but there are specific problems which are not, which have not a simple solution. So I think we have to discuss it in a moment. According to the anti-cheating regulations, we deal only with over-the-board games. And last point, we think that all national federations should have also a system to fight against cheating, and therefore they need, for example, an anti-cheating officer. And we think if they have such a structure, they can also fight against cheating. We have 3 levels. You will describe this later. And on the lowest level, we think normally national federations should deal with that, not the Fair Play Commission. You find the details in the paper. Okay, next article deals with complaints and investigations. I will talk first about complaints. This is a standard procedure that leads to an investigation. You know these forms, they are part of the anti-cheating guidelines, so they are 6 years old now. You know, we have 2 different forms. One is called the in-tournament complaint form. If something happens during a tournament, then the player can use this. And if the player has, after the tournament, the feeling that cheating occurred, he has to use the post-tournament complaint, send it to Fide office and to the chair or the secretary of our commission. Important, very important is that we do not accept informal complaints. You know, a lot of chess players tend to speak a lot, and we want that if a chess player has the feeling that cheating occurs, he has to use this form, has to sign, and then we will investigate this case. Very important is the role of the chief arbiter. The chief arbiter is the first official who knows about this accusation, and he has to be ready to give a player who wishes so this form, and he has to give some information to the accusing player. For example, that it's not a joke, but if he makes false accusations, this can lead that he himself can be punished. And also very important, the chief arbiter has the power to start some investigations. You can find details in the recommendations for arbiters. You will find them, for example, on the web page of the Arbiters Commission. And very important is, should the chief arbiter inform the accused player? I would say details again in the recommendation for arbiters, but I would say during a game it's usually not very wise to do so, but after the end of the game, maybe the chief arbiter decides to search that player. Of course, he should be informed. Then the chief arbiter has the possibility to say, that's rubbish what this player told me, I will dismiss this accusation. He can do so, has to put it in his report, and then the player who thinks this decision by the chief arbiter was not right can send us a post-tournament complaint, and we will investigate by ourselves. So it's in most cases our investigations are triggered by one player by using one of these two forms, or what's also possible by a report of the chief arbiter. If he tells us something strange has happened, we can use this information and start investigation. But we are not limited to such cases. We can also use any other information we got. For example, in some cases we have whistleblowers, and we follow the information if they are valid enough. And it's rare, but possible. Also, the EDC can ask us for doing some investigations. That's the complaints. Now the investigation procedure. I would like to be a little bit shorter because Konstantin and Michail will after explain it more detailed. But maybe the most important things will also tell you better twice heard than only once. And I will start with the general principles. It's very important, the first principle, all complaints based solely on the assumption that a player is playing stronger than expected due to his or her rating will be considered manifestly unfounded. It's very important. You know, sometimes it happens that the player is playing the match or the tournament, the game of his life. And that is not, that is okay for us. And if the only things happened, his player plays better than his rating, then that means for us, if it stands alone, that's important, nothing. Then another very important principle, the standard of proof shall be whether, no, I got a strange message. I don't know why, and okay, I continue. Another important principle is the standard of proof shall be whether cheating has been established to occur to comfortable satisfaction. And this means this standard of proof is greater than the balance of probability, but less than proof beyond reasonable doubt. It's very important. We are not dealing with penal law, so we have another standard, and this is also the standard which is accepted by Ethics Commission. Next principle is confidentially. It's very important that all parties in this investigation should not talk to others about this, and we also inform them about that. And the IC, now IP, is independent. Nothing has, nobody can give them orders. They are independent. And that is maybe for investigation very important. All parties, federations, players, organizers, arbiters have the obligation to cooperate. That means that if we ask them to give us, for example, the contact details or to explain what has happened, they are obliged to give us that information. What is happening then? If we have, for example, form with one player accuses another player that he has cheated, the first step is Fair Play Commission will discuss if we open an investigation. If the complaint is inadmissible, for example, it deals with online chess, or it's manifestly unfounded, you know this wording from before, then the Commission will reject this complaint. Otherwise, investigation panel is nominated, and this panel has the task to gather all evidences, physical evidences, observational evidences, and statistical evidences. I'm not sure if we have time to talk about the role of Professor Regan, but I think most of you know his work. Okay, at the end, it stands a decision. The investigation panel, consisting of 3 persons, can dismiss a complaint by an unanimous vote. Otherwise, a report has to be prepared and forwarded to the whole commission, and then the commission will discuss and decide, dismiss by majority vote or forward to the EDC, who makes a decision if cheating really has occurred or not. An extra part, an extra article of anti-cheating regulations is about manifestly unfounded accusation. The definition you find, because it's so important, in the first article under Article 1.5. An accusation of cheating that is manifestly unfounded, e.g. based only on emotion and or insufficient data, is a false accusation. An accusation of cheating that is based only factual circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe that there is a reasonable change of cheating is not considered a manifestly unfounded accusation. We don't want to tell players who have the feeling that cheating occurred, tell them leave us alone, we're not interested. But if it's really strange and weird, then it is a false accusation, and then we have to follow this. You can also use these forms, and accusation also can come from a third party, or what's the most worse thing, it can be a public accusation in Facebook or Twitter or what else. The player can make a complaint, and this is the only case our commission has the power to make sanctions by ourselves. We can give the player a warning, this player who made a false accusation. We can suspend him up to 3 months, and if he made by a public accusation, or we can suspend him after in the second time up to 6 months. In more severe cases, we can also forward such a case to the Ethics and Disciplinary Commission. The procedural rules are covered by Article 6. I think you can read it by yourself if you have time. Maybe only 3 most important major points. The statute of limitation is 8 years. Language is usually English. And of course, the accused person has the right to be heard, and every party has to cover his costs by himself. Last, for the moment, what is the sanctions? It's not part of the anti-cheating regulations. It forwards to the Fide codes of ethics, because again, not the anti-cheating commission, now Fair Play Commission, will punish cheater. That is the task of the ethics and disciplinary commission. Which sanctions are possible? You find it in the Code of Ethics: a warning, a reprimand, return of awards, fines up to $20,000, revocation of titles and sport results, social work. I have no idea what is the idea behind that, and a ban up to 15 years. You will also find something in the Fide title regulations, and again, Fair Play Commission itself is prosecutor, but will not give the sanctions. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to talk to. Took some minutes more. I hope it's okay for you. But thank you for listening. And again, at the end of our workshop, anybody of us will answer questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, yes. Sorry, I'm just having trouble sharing my screen, but I will try to solve it. And in the meantime, I will also try to tell you what happened. Okay, so I think Klaus gave you an introduction to the technical and the law part of our commission. And we also have a second document, which I will try to share in due course. But let's see, open system preferences. Okay, aha, there you go. Ooh, I need to get out of Zoom. Okay, I need to go out and come back again because I didn't allow Zoom to do it. So I'll be back in a second so we can share my screen. I'll be back in a second. Can you hear me? I should be able now. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good. Let's go and try to share my screen. Share. Okay. So I guess you should be able to see the anti-protection measures. Now, what are these about? We had a fairly thorough introduction to the more theoretical part. Now, the anti-cheating protection measures are supposed to get into the details of how we protect a tournament. Of course, you all know that we have different kind of tournaments, and that it would be basically unreasonable to ask from a local tournament to be as equipped, for example, as the World Championship match. So for this reasons, this document opens on the levels of protections. We have 3 levels of protections. You will see them all here. Okay, I'll stop here. And they are events that require maximum levels of protection, which is basically the reference where you can apply everything you can possibly wish for protecting your tournament. And this would be Fide level 1 events, which is official Fide events as defined by the Fide Events Commission, or Fide World Championship and Olympiad Commission. Why did we not specify? Because these may change in time. So the idea is basically we have whatever Fide calls a Fide level 1 event. Olympiad falls within this reach and other major tournaments. Round robins with an average rating of 2600 or more. Why? Because if you have a round robin with an average rating of 2600, of course, you have a little more means than a small tournament because this is a rather high category. And the same applies for women. If you are gathering women above 2400, this means you are organizing an important women's tournament. We want that to be protected. And there is a third criterion, and the criterion is prize funds. When you have a prize fund in excess of 100,000 euro, then you would have to have maximum requirements. Now, what this means in actual practice, we will be seeing in a few minutes, okay? So just for now, the notion is we have 3 levels. We also have levels that require increased levels of protection. So not the maximum, not the standard, just a little bit more. So it's Fide level 2 events, and this is currently defined as competitions where Fide, GM and AM titles and norms can be earned. Events with prize funds in excess of 20,000 and round robins with an average rating of 2,400 and more for men and 2,200 for women. The rest is Fide-rated tournaments where the other titles and title norms can be earned. The rationale here is the same as I said before. Basically, we don't want to put unnecessary burdens on normal tournaments. Now, what follows is a very important provision. For national championship, national teams championship, and national junior or youth championships, organizers are required to adopt a level of protection 1 level above that required for an equivalent non-championship event. Now, this provision basically serves one purpose. When you have a national championship, not all nations have very strong players. So maybe that would be a round robin, and the round robin would be, I don't know, 2,200 on average. Now, we want that tournament to have at least 1 level higher than it was supposed to be before. Now, of course, this would qualify just for level 3 events. But since it is a national championship, then we step up. We go 1 above, okay? And by the way, this was used as an argument in a recent case that was awarded recently by ethics in a national championship in Kenya. The fact that the tournament was, that the events occurred in one of the legs of the national championship was taken into account in coming to a determination by the EDC. So this is very important, and you should never forget this. If it is a national championship, then you need to step up. There is another provision which has largely been, let's say, forgotten. And this is that organizers are responsible for implementing the anti-cheating protection measures, and that the chief arbiter has a duty to check that the tournament is compliant with the anti-cheating protection measures. What does this mean in practice? This means that it is not the arbiter who should ever do anything. It's the organizer. The organizer must put everything in place so that when the arbiter comes, it's all done. However, the arbiter needs to check that things have been done properly. You bear responsibility for this. If you don't do, then you may be accountable to your relevant commission for disciplinary action. Okay, so let's go to the second section. I have 3 minutes less than I was supposed, so I'll try to rush this through. And of course, this compliance with the anti-cheating protection measures is mandatory. This document is not for fun. This is mandatory law. You have to apply it. This means that a tournament, if it is not well equipped against cheating in the future, which is going to be the imminent future, is not going to be rated, because simply it's the threat to chess by computers and phones and everything is too, so we just need to do. I will just skip this on the waivers, just to tell you that, of course, we foresaw the possibility that tournaments ask for waivers because of their circumstance, okay? So since it can be a burden to apply these rules, and for example, you might be playing under the sun in a place where, I don't know, you're wearing almost nothing, and then of course you can't cheat, okay, because you're on the beach. Then in this case, you would probably waive some of these regulations. You have to ask your national federation, or you have to ask Fide qualification committee, and they will just consider the circumstances and see if your waiver request will be granted or not. Okay, so this is, then we have this, the special anti-cheating arbiter. Now this is a concept which is evolving, and I must say that a few years ago when we turned to the Arbiters Commission, this was almost a no, 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 no. Things are changing. We have a feeling this is the way to go, and that the anti-cheating specialist, which is what I now tend to think would it be even better than an anti-cheating arbiter, is not necessary a person who knows everything about the regulations. Cheating is a very special domain, and so is the rules of chess. So an international arbiter might not be the best anti-cheating person. What we mean here is that you can have special anti-cheating arbiters or persons who would be just specially entrusted with anti-cheating tasks. And I think in the future, this is where we are going to go. So you see that these regulations contain, although just in a nutshell, the future. We hope that this is where Fide will be evolving. And you can see this already in the anti-cheating online framework, where you get an arbiter, grandmasters, and statisticians who work all together. Different domains, different categories, different knowledge, different people. Okay. Organizers of event designated for increased and maximum protection are strongly encouraged to consult with the FPL. Why? Because if you have an important topic, you might know everything. And the people at FPL are the specialists. So we are there not to make it difficult, we are there to make it easy. Just drop in a line and we will try to understand together what the right anti-cheating protection measures are. I will go into the details of the practicalities later, so I'm not going to touch on practicalities now. On section 3, you have the definition reversed. So we start with the standard protection and what you need to do. So for example, and I will go through this, I just have 4 minutes, but I'll try to go through. that the organizers must clearly and carefully designate areas for players. Now, of course, this is in the regulations, but most times arbiters and organizers just forget. Why is it so important? Because this will be held against the player if he goes out of the playing area. So it must be easy. Also, when we say that organizers shall endeavor in so much as possible and reasonable to avoid contact between players and spectators, this is also in the regulations. But by stating it again, what we do say is, look, tackling cheating starts with common sense. So if you avoid contact between players and between players and spectators, then you are helping a lot. Also, you have to provide separate refreshment, toilet and smoking areas for players and spectators, because otherwise they will meet there. Okay, and in team competitions, you have to make sure that this also duplicates for captains, because captains should never get in touch with anybody else. So this is how we do it. The easiest way of cheating is talking. And we do remember this, okay? Now, you have to adopt at least one security measure. This is generally a handheld scanner. Then there is a recommendation here to send all available games in PGN format, because this helps us to screen them. And this will become a no longer a recommendation, but a requirement in higher levels of protection. So if the level of protection is higher, you will adopt 2 security measures. If the protection is higher, you will have an obligation to send, okay? And most importantly, when you register the tournament, you have to take responsibility that you are applying these measures. You don't apply them, the tournament may not be rated and in future won't be rated. All this basically increases slightly in the second and in the third until maximum protections, where of course, for example, here you have new provisions. Watches, pens, and other devices met out in playing area. So if you read them through, you will see that this is just increasing step by step, and it's getting harder and tougher for the organizer the higher the level of the tournament. I'll skip through this because this is fairly easy and understandable. And then you have the annex, and the annex is basically what devices you can use. The annex tends to be old in a matter of weeks because technology changes, but I think that it's clearly understandable. We will be getting into this more later, so I think I did it in 12 minutes instead of 15, and I will happily leave the floor to the people who will come after me.
So I hope you can hear me. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Now I'm taking the floor to present briefly the procedures of the Fair Play Committee after we have an incident to investigate. When a cheating incident is brought to the attention of the FPL, an investigator at chamber can be nominated to investigate it. In our web meeting, we discuss about this incident, and we decide if it needs to be investigated by having an investigatory chamber. Fair Play Commission has the right to perform preliminary investigations with respect to an alleged or possible case of cheating-related violation. I believe that you can view my presentation file. Okay. If a complaint under the Article A1 is inadmissible or manifestly unfounded, On its face, the FPL may reject it by a majority vote. The IC will consist of 3 members of the Fair Play Commission nominated by the Fair Play Chairman based on a rotation system. The nominated IC members then select a chairman for this IC, and it's written that the chairman and the secretary of the FPL cannot be members of an investigatory chamber. Now, the IC is an independent body and is not subject to directions from any other party. The IC shall consider the presented physical and observational evidence. It will also consider the statistical evidence gathered as part of the investigation. There are enough tools for that. It can also gather additional evidence in the course of its investigation. I can see that there is also a question of that. If a complaint is inadmissible or manifestly unfounded on its face, the FPL may reject it by a majority vote. That means, Vera, that we are going to discuss it, and if it is obvious that something is obviously unfounded, we may have a vote on that and decide to reject this incident, let's say. We will discuss this later on the Q&A section. Players, organizers, arbiters, national federations, and other parties are all required to cooperate with the IC. Failure to do so may result in referral to the Ethics Disciplinary Commission. The investigation chamber should investigate each case within a reasonable time, of course. The standard of proof shall be whether cheating has been established to occur to comfortable satisfaction. This standard of proof is greater than a balance of probability, but less than proof beyond reasonable doubt. These parts are written in the anti-cheating regulations. If the IC comes to unanimous conclusion that no cheating occurred or there is not enough evidence to meet the standard of proof, it shall dismiss the complaint and inform the chairman and the secretary of Fair Play Commission. The complainant also should be informed and the accused person with a brief note. If the National Federation of the accused person was involved, it will be informed as well. When a conclusion other than unanimous dismissal is reached at the end of the investigation chamber shall prepare a report indicating the action that triggered the investigation, the factual circumstances of the incident, the findings of the investigation, and the proper sanction. The report may cover any other breach of Fide regulations found by the IC and present the decision and report to FPL for consideration. Fair Play Commission may ask the investigation chamber to consider additional facts and or carry out further investigations. Once a report is deemed final by the IC, FPL decides by a majority vote if the case is to be forwarded to Ethics and Disciplinary Commission for judgment. If the case is not forwarded to EDC, it is considered to be dismissed. The Fair Play Commission shall forward its findings to the complainant and the accused person, and in the National Federation of the accused person if the federation was involved. When the IC is acting on behalf of Ethics Disciplinary Commission, it shall present a preliminary report to FPL for consideration. A Fair Play Commission may ask the investigation the IC to consider additional facts and or carry out further investigation. Once the report is deemed final by the IC, FPL shall transmit it to the Ethics and Disciplinary Commission. when an investigation is referred to a national federation, pursuant to sections 2.3, 2.4, the national federation will investigate the case and apply those actions they deem proper. National federations are required to notify the Fair Play Commission of their decisions together with the evidence considered during the proceedings. The Fair Play Commission may adopt this national federate decision and or refer the case to Ethics Commission. If the Fair Play Commission does not adopt the national federation decision, then the sanction will only apply at the national level. Now, what about FPL and the Ethics and Disciplinary Commission? For each case, the Fair Play Commission jurisdiction is limited to recommend possible sanctions to the Ethics and Disciplinary Commission. The Ethics Commission judges according to their regulation, and they make the final decisions, officially imposing the penalty, if any. Okay, this is a brief note of this of the procedures of Fair Play Commission, and now I will give floor to Konstantin Landa to continue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michail. Thank you for my all colleagues who described in details our regulations and our rules. So now I'm going to move a little bit more to the practice, and I share my screen. And one of the first our case was a Ivan Titimov case. It happened in 2014, the tournament in Benidorm. Let me share the screen. So, and I share my screen. Can you type me if you can see the screen? Is it okay? So, as I already pointed out, we are making our investigation chamber if we are getting the complaint. In that case, the chief arbiter sent us the post-tournament complaint, and investigation was triggered. So the chair in this case was Klaus. Klaus who represented you our regulations, and as a member of the committee, you're the Yuri, Garrett, and Andy Howe. And I want to describe the situation. What is the written little bit down in this post-tournament complaint sent us by the international arbiter Valero de la Cruz. He pointed that during the ninth round, the arbiter teams realized a suspicious attitude what was happened in the game played on the first board between the players Theodore Fuente, Enrique against Titimov Ivan. During the last 2 hours of the game, Mr. Titimov, born 1988, put the thumb on his left hand on his left ear, making and recording all his moves with the right hand. After the game was finished with win of Mr. Titimov, arbiter decided to make an inspection according Article 11.3b of Fide laws of chess. Mr. Titimov first agreed and asked for the permission to go to the restroom to wash his face. This request was refused. Mr. Titimov was asked to sit down on the chair. Chief arbiter then inspected in the presence of Mr. Alfonso Pedaza, international organizer, Mr. Titimov's right ear using a flashlight. Nothing was found when chief arbiter wanted to inspect Mr. Titimov's left ear. The player became very nervous and refused flatly to continue the inspection. Mr. Titimov was told that he could lead to consequences, but he persisted in his attitude and left. The game of Mr. Titimov was declared lost, and he was excluded from the tournament. So in this situation, Titimov made a written appeal to the tournament's appeal committee. He explained he was offered to name somebody he knows to be present during the inspection. He asked to find Mr. Roy Ronaldo, who was easily reachable. But the arbiters did not try to find him. During the inspection, Mr. Pedraza informed him that it's not obligatory to permit an exception, inspection. Therefore, he decided to refuse. The chief arbiter said would have consequences, but his Spanish is very limited. He didn't understand what consequences means. He understood that nothing would happen if he refused to be inspected. At no time B was aware he could lose the game. The appeal committee decided to ratify the expulsion from the tournament as sub 2,300 of the player Ivan Titimov. Maintain the results of the 9 rounds, table 1, Enrique Theodor Fuente 0-1 Ivan Titimov. The reason of maintain is the result the following. Regarding outcome of the game of the round 9, the committee believes that since the players penalized for the not meeting the arbitration requirement in this sanction occurs once at the game and ended, we understand what is not the most correct thing. So to give point to opponent player. Well, when format commission start the investigation, and of course, first of all, commission sent the request to accused player and also to the other parties to send us explanation of the situation in details. And secondary, we are sending the request to our technical expert, Ken Regan, to make the statistical report about games of accused player. Mr. Deventer sent emails to Mr. Titimov, to Bulgarian Chess Federation, and to Mr. Zhivkov, who was chief arbiter of 5th Balkan Amateur Tournaments Festival Under 23 in Sweden. In this report, the chief arbiter of Benidorm tournament mentioned that Mr. Titimov was inspected some months before. So first, nobody answered. The mail addressed to Titimov, Mr. De La Cruz gave us, did not operate. So Mr. Deventer asked me, ICC member Konstantin Landa, as he speaks Russian, to call the phone number that was mentioned in complaint, and it was found that we got a wrong email address by the claimant. In the meantime, registered letter were sent to the 2 different addresses to Mr. Titimov, Bulgarian, and also Bulgarian Chess Federation, Mr. Zhivkov. We were reminded to answer to request. So there is meaning that one of the big problems of our commission is the lack of communication with national federations and also to parties of the cases. So it's quite difficult to forced or not forced to ask to send us answers, and it takes a lot of time. And our investigation time became longer. It takes more time. Usually we send in the letters, but we are not getting the answers. So we need to get extra information from third parties to find such emails, or we have to make some extra calls to contact the persons. And as you see in our report, chamber report, the Bulgarian Chess Federation also was not so cooperative and sent the reply that we are not expect too much the Fide management, and we got this answer from manager of Mr. Topalov, Sylvia Donailov, what is the famous person in the chess world. Well, when we have got the statistical report, which I want to explain a little bit, Professor Ken Regan was asked to give IC a statistical report considering the games played by Mr. Tetimov and Benidorm, and according to section 2, part B, last paragraph of IC guidelines, also his game played in Vidin. So our Fair Play Commission, Informa Time, ICC Commission has a right to take in consideration the game played before from 1st January 2012. So Professor Ken Regan can add these statistic games, these games to our whole statistic and bring us the results. If player cheated before, we can also see within our Ken Regan statistics. In a summary, Annex 9, Professor Regan comes to the following conclusion. The test gives Z-score 4.71 for the December 2014 Benidorm are open. This tournament where Tetimov was called, in which the formal complaint was submitted. They represent score of over 800,000 to 1 against the null hypothesis when selection bias is accounted for, with a massively about 2.75 threshold in the ICC regulations. Right now we have the threshold less, we have the threshold 2.5. We decided to reduce this threshold because some of the cases was a little bit about 2.5, but we have decided for the proofs 2.5 is pretty good enough for the further presentation to ethic and disciplinary commissions. We discussed with Ken Regan and we agreed to make this threshold a little bit lower. So, but that time is massively about the 2.75 threshold in the ICC regulations, Appendix C guidelines for the statistical support in presence of independent evidence, such as behavioral or physical, which is itself about the standard severe minimum of 200. For his previous open tournament, which were in our consideration as well, August 2014, it was 3 months before that tournament in Benidorm, at August 2014 Balkan Amateur Festival, at which was player unrest but not formal compliant to ICC. Professor Ken Regan obtained also the very high numbers, 4.02 for odds over 34,000 to 1. When these two results are combined by standard statistical rules, the overall results 6.17 was odds are many billions to 1 against being natural. Backup test with other engine may be arguably lower when towards 5.0, but even when is 3 million to 1. It means when Tetimov could play with 3 million games, he can play this same way only one time out of 3 billion attempts. And the conclusion and investigation chamber, after the considering all the facts, all the complaint, the IC has no reasonable doubt. It is important what Mr. Tetimov violated during the last round of the Benidorm tournaments, Article 11.3a and b of the law of chess and Article 2.25 of the Fide Code of Ethics. Although there is not direct proof, the circumstances allow only the conclusion. Mr. Titimov used illegal electronic assistant. Chief Arbiter de la Cruz described a suspicious attitude, which was only reason what he took the decision to make an inspection of ears of Mr. Titimov. When he tried to inspect his left ear, suddenly Mr. Titimov became nervous and refused further inspection. Investigation Chamber believes that there was micro receiver of something similar in Mr. Titimov's left ear. So after this description of this case, we see we have two different parts. We have the physical evidence, and we have the also very strong statistical evidences from Ken Reagan. And a combination of these two factors lead Commission to their conclusion and to send with final report to the Ethics Commission. So, and in this very first our case, Ethics Commissions just confirm conclusion of investigation chamber and found Mr. Titimov guilty and make him 2 years. Let me find where is the note here. Is Mr. Reganov? Yes, and make 2 years for Mr. Titimov as our investigation chamber proposed for Ethics Commission. It's okay. It's a very long document, 52 pages. I'm not going to read all of them. So conclusion sanctions. Mr. Titimov was sanctioned with a worldwide ban of 2 years to take effect from 18 April 2017 and to end on 17 April 2019. During this period, Mr. Titimov is prohibited to participating as a player in any rated chess competition or many chess-related activity as an arbiter, organizer, and or representative of any chess body. So with the practice, I just briefly pointed the main situation and how the arbiter acted with the player. And hopefully, so I was quite clear for this case, and I given the floor for the next my colleague who wants to present the other case. Thank you for your attention.
So who's next? Is it Salomeja or myself?
I think it is me.
Okay.
It is witch hunting and Freiman. So speaking about witch hunting case, do you see my screen? No, it is Konstantin Landa screen. Okay. Firstly, Konstantin should not show his screen. Okay. So, as Klaus briefly mentioned already, speaking about false accusations, we have this concept in our regulations, a sentence, but still it is better than nothing. But of course, a practice is more comprehensive than just a sentence or two in our regulations. And for now, the only case where witch hunting was dealt is the famous case occurred in European Individual Women's Championship in Georgia in 2015. I myself participated in this championship, and partly because of that, I did not participate in investigative chamber in order to avoid any conflict of interest or simply impartiality, because I myself was a witness actually of the story. My subjective feeling was that this story is very ugly. I didn't like how everything evolved in Georgia. It was a free day, and basically for some players there was no free day because the signatures were collected during this free day in order to publish, in order to delay the games delay the transmission of the games of one particular player. It was Michail Sandu, who had 6 out of 7, and she was probably in the first place there, or sharing first and second, and it was suspicious, so to say, and because of this suspicion, the whole story evolved. And basically, the finish of the story in chess perspective, from the chess player point of view, is really painful. Michail Sandu lost her, I don't know, 4 games in a row probably, and took very low place compared to the initial seed she was taking. So basically, if we do not have any legal knowledge, we witness some kind of psychological terror against one particular player who in the end of the whole tournament finishes like below her abilities, but in a very, very painful way, like losing many games in a row, because probably she could not withstand a pressure that was that was put on her by her colleagues. So returning to the legal discourse, actually we can speak about 2 between rights, and it is legally it is really not easy to combine and reconcile these rights. The one is the right to a level playing field without cheating. This is self-understandable, self-explanatory, like in any other sport. If you participate in competition, you have a right to a level playing field where everyone has equal possibilities. But from the other hand, another right is to play without groundless psychological disturbance. Actually, I made up this right in the eyes of European Court of Human Rights. Probably we should speak about the right to reputation or the right to private life. That are interrelated to the right to play without groundless psychological disturbance, but in any case it's not the same. But I just made up this concept because I think it is very, very proper concept in the context of chess. So we have these 2 rights and we have to balance it. And of course, from the legal point of view, it's far from easy to balance this because the story was it could be viewed from both points of view, from Zhukova's point of view and from Sandu points of view. And at the first sight, both players are, or at least could be considered as right, as rational, because Zhukova was honestly convinced that something is going wrong, something is suspicious. And even when I was like having a dinner, other Russian players came to me and said, you know, Salomeja, you also had 2.5 out of 3, but then you lost 2 games, so it is normal. But you see this, your colleague Sandu, who is also not supposed to be a strong player, had 6 out of 7. It doesn't happen in reality. So yeah, we had kind of troublesome dinners, and all this fuss was evolving during this tournament. And it was not tasty, to say the least. So basically, this witch hunting case, from legal point of view, emerged when one chess player targeted another chess player in a public smear campaign with accusations of cheating based upon fears and suspicions unsupported by any concrete evidence. So during the 3-day, Sandu was second in the tournament standings with a score of 6 out of 7. She found out that her opponent in round 8, Zhukova, was distributing papers and collecting signatures with a petition against her. Returning back to what you have already heard during this hour, or an hour and a half to be precise, from legal point of view, Zhukova acted, of course, not in a not proper way, because if she was really concerned about what is happening, then she had to file in-tournament complaint. In-tournament complaint is the only proper way to deal with such a situation. So no petitions, no distributing papers, no rumors during the dinner, no rumors during the riding journey during a 3-day. These are not considered as normal accusation, and this should not happen. But it was 2015, everything was still in the footsteps, everything was still like in the very, very beginning, and Zhukova did what she thought is right, some kind of public initiative that has actually nothing to do with normal legal procedure. And normal legal procedure is, of course, just to file in-tournament complaint, go to the chief arbiter of the tournament and deal with this in a subtle, in a discreet way, without escalating it, without making it like almost as a TV show. So everything was done far, and partly because of that, held liable for this, and got a 3 months ban, as I will talk a bit later. And what was the defense of Zhukova, of the respondent? She simply stated that she did not intend to accuse the complainant of cheating or to damage her reputation, but merely expressed her concerns and requested the organizers to take precautionary measures in order to prevent all possible suspicions. So more or less logical defense, but as I try to reiterate and accent that expression of concerns should not occur in public way, should not occur in such a way that you are intimidating your opponent and making and putting pressure on her, or on him or her, and accordingly psychologically disturbing him or her. So everything has to be done in a much more discreet way, in a confidential way, and basically the two actors should interact. That is the claimant, or in this case, and the chief arbiter, but not the whole tournament, the girls from Eastern. So basically, will a decision from the F. Zhukova was punished, but the punishment is not severe because the practice is very, very fresh. So the punishment itself probably should be the right warning signal that such behavior is not tolerated, and witch hunting does not have any place in chess world. She got 3 months ban from playing chess in any tournament, and the sanction was suspended for a period of 1 year on the condition that she is not found guilty of making reckless or unjustified accusations of cheating against any other chess player during the period of suspension. So basically, that's it about this case. I think I will proceed to another case in order to say the screens. Another is about Freiman. So I will just go on. Later I will check what's going on chat. Now I just hear that something is writing, but I do not react. So another case is about allegations of cheating or attempted cheating at the St. Petersburg Championships. Here I was chairperson of the investigative chamber, and basically from prosecutorial point of view, that is, we as Fair Play Commission mainly can be considered as prosecutors, while the court is the ethics. That's why you find all the decisions in. We are just prosecuting and investigating. We are not sanctioning, and it is not us who renders the final decision. So this case is interesting from many points of view. What I want to point out is that this is a borderline case, clearly a borderline case. What Konstantin Landa was telling, that usually we have physical evidence and statistical evidence, and the combination of these two evidence usually lead to sanctioning. And in this case, we did not have physical evidence. In other words, we did not have a smoking gun. We did not find a telephone in the toilet, and Freiman did not, like Tatimov refused to be inspected of his ear, so Freiman also did not indicate that he was cheating in such a physical way. So basically, we had some observational evidence by witnesses, that is by St. Petersburg players, and we had technical results of Regan statistical analysis of a probability of cheating. And in this case, we had sigma 2.75. That's why this case is a borderline, because it is lower than Tatimov and not so accurate and precise physical evidence as we had, for example, in Nigolidze, that you will hear later. And of course, no confession. So basically, a borderline case. And what is interesting from the legal point of view, putting aside all speculations and wishes, is that the standard of proof was set in this case, because ethics drew some margin between the two standards of proof. Ethics said that this case could be won. That means that this case could be sufficient for sanctioning if the standard of proof was not comfortable satisfaction, but, for example, preponderance of probabilities. You see this yellow 0.5 or 2.8 or 2.75, something like that, could lead to sanctioning on the balance of probabilities or on the preponderance of probabilities, which is clearly lower than comfortable satisfaction. So ethics have given Mr. Freiman the benefit of doubt that this, from prosecutorial point of view, the case was unsuccessful, but it is also it is successful from theoretical point of view and for general jurisprudence of ethics, because it served as a borderline which sigma can be considered already close to the comfortable satisfaction, and which can be considered as close to the like preponderance of probabilities. And of course, like almost in every case, arbiters and organizers were told to be more accurate, were told to be more discreet in a way, and to do their job a bit more thoroughly. That is, of course, we could have proven this case for sure if we had a smoking gun. That is, if we had a telephone found in the toilet, for example, or something like that. But without this, it is quite difficult, and it is good to know that ethics follows due process and respects the rights of the respondent, but at the same time it makes fair play commission's work harder, because we do not have the same powers as prosecutors, but from us it is required to act as prosecutors do, and to provide not an empty evidence, and even not not some allegations, but very, very strong evidence. So basically that's it. As previous time, if someone has questions on public chat or on private chat, I will try to react. And here I will give a floor to someone else to speak about other cases.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me fine. My name is Laurent Freyd. Some of you know me. For those who don't know me, I'm the chairman of the Arbiters Commission. So before I start with a smoking gun case we had from last year, I would just like to thank the Fair Play Commission for this initiative to have this meeting all together, because I think it's always important to have cross-commission exchanges, possibilities to help things grow. And today it is through a webinar where people are from all over the world. I can see people from the 4 continents, so I hope this is useful for you. And let's go to Strasbourg. So this one will be a bit different from the ones you saw, because this is basically a smoking gun, as Salomeja said it earlier. And I took the opportunity to speak about it from the preliminary part, let's say, not using the full report from the Ethics Commission, but speaking about what happened before. Also, because this is one of the parts where the arbiters are more directly involved. So probably, except if you were on holiday during that period and without network or anything, you saw that picture, which is on that slide. This is quite a sad phenomenon, where we have on the one hand an arbiter who was absolutely perfect in the way he handled the case. I mean, he was not experienced at all with anti-cheating, but immediately he was looking for help in order to deal with the case properly. And on the other hand, we had a spectator who took a picture, and instead of keeping it for himself, was looking for pride or whatever on the internet, and that picture went all over the world. And even we could read at some point that the tournament organizers had a CCTV in the toilets, or such strange stories which were completely crazy. So this is about this story from last year, where on the one hand, the processes were followed in order to catch a cheater. And on the other hand, we learned lesson about what to prevent in the future in terms of such leaks like this picture. So I chose to take 6 steps in this example. So the 6 key steps which go from the trigger when we actually understood that there was a device in the story, then how the arbiter started to control more thoroughly the game, consultation with Arbiters Commission and Fair Play Commission, what plan to execute in order to catch the cheater, and finally the report, which is the start of the job of the Fair Play Commission, investigatory chambers, and so on. So about the trigger, basically that might be the first start of any story where you catch a cheater. You get either from your own observation or from an external information. In that case, in Strasbourg, it was a spectator coming to the arbiter, telling him, okay, we know that this player, tournament after tournament, is always raising his rating. It's really strange that he's getting so strong for a guy who is getting old, etc. And so one of the spectators was particularly suspicious, and during the game he followed the player in the toilets and he took the picture. So he knew that there was a phone, and he went to the arbiter. The arbiter obviously knew that such a proof is not a proof, because come on, you don't use a picture that was taken in the toilets. That's not acceptable. So even though you understand that something's going on, you can't use anything you got in the file which will go to the Fair Play Commission, as was explained by Klaus in his speech when he was speaking about whispers. I don't remember the exact term in English, but yeah, you always as an arbiter have to take into account informations which come to you and to understand what you can do or what you cannot do with them. So the first reflex of the arbiter was to start controlling. So he dedicated one of his team arbiters to the supervision of that player, to take notes about what's going on with the game, etc. And at the start of this process, actually the player didn't go to the toilets, and so he just stayed at the board, and that was pretty good, because there was nothing too much to worry about this first step. But the first reflex was absolutely good, that understanding something going on, okay, we put the discrete control on the suspicious player. And at the same time, while the colleague was supervising the player, the chief arbiter contacted me, and by chance I was preparing a tournament in Italy with Yuri, the secretary of the Fair Play Commission. So we had at the same place Arbiters Commission and Fair Play Commission, and we could discuss with the chief arbiter, try to advise him on how to deal with the case without making mistakes, as we could say, so that we don't get any problems if we catch the cheater with the smoking gun and the procedure is properly followed. So the arbiter called us, he shared facts and was seeking advice, and we tried to help him the best we could in order to catch the cheater in a clean way. And apparently that worked pretty well. And I think this is something very important, that not all of the arbiters have experience with anti-cheating. And we are speaking here about a level 3 tournament. It was 7 rounds, not even valid for norms. So of course, at that level, you don't have such high expectations as in a world championship. So also the experience of the arbiter, who was not even Fide arbiter. He is very experienced French arbiter, but not yet Fide arbiter. So I think that was a very good example of good reflex to seek help, and arbiters shouldn't be afraid of that. So what we did next was to plan and to understand what can happen. We expected that the player would go back to the toilets, of course, and then to prepare a space where he could be inspected as specified in Article 11 from the laws of chess and things like that. The arbiters locally had to define the roles and responsibilities in his team, who will follow, who will ask to go to the place where the player would be interviewed, etc., etc., and also kind of understand what could be the different scenario if the game finishes, if the game does not finish, if he goes to the toilet, and so on. So this planning part was also important in order not to let him escape in a way. And so the last part is about catching him. So at some point, the player went back to the toilets. So what happened is that the arbiter, when the player finished in the toilets, asked him to follow him in that dedicated room where he would be interviewed. And in the room, they asked him to empty his pockets and things like that. Of course, nothing was on him. But one of the colleagues' role was to inspect the toilets. And in the toilets, he found a mobile phone. And so, of course, he brought the phone in the inspection room. And at some point, the player said, yeah, I admit this is my phone, and I cheated during the game. And then you have the smoking gun. So after that, of course, there is the administrative part of the process where the arbiter had to write down his report, provide also the player signed an acknowledgement that he was caught with his phone hidden in the toilets and things like that, which were brought to the Fair Play Commission. And then the investigatory chamber did their job and finally forwarded the case to the Ethics Commission. So it's known as case number 8, 2019. And the result is that there is a 6-year ban on the player, and also the revocation of his player's title of Grandmaster. So this shows that cheating can have really some serious consequences on the player's career as well. And so about the key learnings, I hope that most of the learnings you have as arbiters in the arbiter seminars, but here from real life, I think, yeah, as I already said during the presentation, teamwork and consultancy is very, very important, because basically several brains sometimes bring better results than only one. And that's what we are doing in seminars, to encourage arbiters to seek assistance if they don't have enough experience. Of course, a very experienced arbiter might already know what to do on his own, but when they are less experienced, it's very important, and this is very positive. And of course, the negative learning we had was that we didn't have any, of course, as I said in introduction, the picture was never used by the arbiter, neither to speak with the player, nor to escalate to Fide. But the spectator leaked it on the internet, and then you saw it all over the world. And this shows again that we have absolutely no control on social media, on internet, on Facebook, on whatever. And then it's very, very important that when an arbiter sees something controversial, he really tries to stop the fire before even it starts, and really warn the person who would bring such an evidence to stop about it, that it remains confidential between them and not at all post it on social networks or things like that. So that's it about this Strasbourg case. I hope the explanation was clear, and of course, if you have questions, we can answer later.
Maybe it's now my second part. The idea was that I'll tell you something about the Sievers case. I think you never heard about it because it was dismissed by the IC. But if I have a look at the advanced time, I propose that we waive this presentation, if you agree.
Okay.
If you,
we can proceed to best practice for organizers and arbiters then.
that's what I propose.
So perhaps Laurent could proceed with arbiters, because
Yeah, the arbiters part is to be covered by Nebojsa, who is the secretary of the Arbiters Commission. And if he's ready, yeah, sure, we can make the transition.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thanks to the Fair Play Commission as the organizer of this webinar or seminar, and also thanks to you for the invitation to participants. And I hope, actually, I know that the webinar will be useful to all of us, and that we will make progress in the future in the field introducing fair play regulations and best practices. Today, we know all IT is on the very high level, and they are very strong chess software and very strong engines, and they are very small devices for data transmission. And if we add unhealthy desire to win and glory from players, then we have unpleasant and unsportsmanlike situation. And I think that first step in introducing anti-cheating measures is the education of arbiters. Recently, the Arbiters Commission has been giving the great attention to the education of arbiters. A special part of all seminar, all Fide arbiters seminar is related to introducing of the fair play and anti-cheating measures. And of course, after that comes the practice, actually application of all skills in the playing area, in the playing hall. All of you spoke about more cases, and I don't like to, if I repeat something, and fortunately, in my career, I didn't have any bad situation about cheating. In the future, in the past, I have a good cooperation with one member of Fair Play Commissions, that Mr. Andy Hovey. He was deputy chief arbiter during the candidates tournament, and I think that was actually very good cooperation between our two commissions, arbiters commissions and the fair play commissions. During the tournaments, we spoke about some problems, and I think in the future we will use all experience, and the situation will be much better. Of course, it's very important to say that the using of anti-cheating measures starts long before the tournament. The chief arbiters and the arbiter in charge of the anti-cheating, in comparison, of course, with organizers, preparing all procedures and equipments that will be used during the tournament, where to set control points, who controls the players, where electronic devices that players carry with them should be left, etc. I think a very important job should be done before the start of the tournaments. And the anti-cheating team, the chief arbiter and the organizer should identify weaknesses in the playing area and anticipate possible cases of cheating. Anticipation is very important in our job. Then comes the work on the preventive measures, how to stop all cheating. Also, preparing the anti-cheating team before the start of the tournament is also very important, and it is necessary to divide the rules and tasks for each member, explain the procedures for all cases. Of course, during the tournament, you need to have good communication with, between the arbiters, chief arbiters, and anti-cheating arbiters, and if necessary, adjust plans and tasks based on the experience during the tournament. Also, what to say, the technical conference before the technical meeting before the tournaments also is very important, and all players must be introduced to the anti-cheating measures and what expected of them in the playing area. I think that issues about which we can speak in the future, and together Arbiters Commission and Fair Play Commissions, and I would like to thanks again for this web seminar. And okay, I have a little problem with my voice because in Belgrade is very hard situation, and I will stop now, and we will continue if you have some questions for the next. Thank you.
So who takes the floor now?
Yes, sorry, I have, yes.
According to what I see as a curriculum, it is best practices for organizers.
Okay,
Laurent.
so, okay, good enough. I must admit I lost track of the time, so I'm not sure how much time I am supposed to talk, but I see that we still have an hour and we have to close. Okay, so I will try to limit this in 10 minutes because I really want there to be some question time. Okay, so we are here for best practice for organizers, and before I get here, I want to answer a few of the things that have happened on the chat. Of course, there is different interpretations as to whether the anti-cheating guidelines stand or don't stand. This is doctrine, and it's almost impossible to give a clear answer here. Some believe that they are superseded by the new regulations only when they cover the same topic. Others believe that where new pieces of regulations have not been written, they still stand. However, it should be everyone. Fide repeatedly told us that the guidelines never held the force of law. So whether they stand or they don't stand, it's actually only soft law. It's not hard law. It was always suggestions, okay? Now, we never intended them to be suggestions. It just happened to be the way things went. So, and also to reply to a few of the other things, the new regulations are well integrated within the Fide handbook. This is what the Commission tried to do. We tried to not overlap with other existing part of the codexes. It was completely irrational to start saying that, for example, we would give 2-3 year sanctions wherever, where the sanctions are decided at EDC level, and there is a general provision for that. And the same goes for results and everything. It's not for us to say what happens. What we need to do is we need to say whether there was cheating. What we do with that is we pass it on to ethics. Ethics then decides if we presented enough evidence, and they give a judgment. Based on the judgment, every individual commission can take its own decisions. Okay, so what the EDC comes up with is, okay, this person cheated on this particular instance. This triggers a number of other actions which should be dealt with by the individual. And this was the reasoning behind it. We can't write it everything, okay? And especially, please do remember that although we would much have loved the contrary, the anti-cheating guidance never held the force of law, never, okay? Now back to anti-cheating best practices for organizers. For those of you who organize a tournament, organizing a cheating-free tournament is a culture. It's a matter of knowledge. It's a matter of understanding how cheaters cheat. So basically, there are only two ways how cheaters can cheat. Either they have a source within their reach, which means they have it on them, or they have it in an accessible place, or they consult with something or someone, okay? So the first thing is you have to make sure that your playing hall is safe. You have to inspect it before the start of the round. You have to inspect it immediately after the players come in. You have to scan it at regular intervals. Now, what does this imply? This implies that most of the time you have requirements, national requirements for your number of arbiters. So you use what the general is, okay, how many arbiters can I have? 1 every 250 players. Ah, that's perfect. So I will just get 1 arbiter. Now, this is when you're really heading towards disaster. In order to have a safe environment, you have to have a reasonable arbiters to players ratio, whatever the regulations tell you. If you are an organizer, you want your tournament to go smooth. Of course, an arbiter is a cost, but this cost you will get back because your tournament will be perceived as free, as cheating free, and the players will like it. So you will need more arbiters than are required just to do the everyday routine work. You need the extra jollies, 2 to 3 extra arbiters who can just check, look, watch, especially for those arbiters who are with us. It also means that your work changed. You are no longer notaries. You are no longer big brains and high brows. You are athletes, and you do walk, and you never sit down almost. And you drink as much as you need just to keep fit, because this is what you do. You roam around the hall and you make sure that you have everything under sight. So you see, most of the things I'm telling you, have nothing to do with the regulations. It's what you need to know. It's culture, and the culture must be spread from the organizer to the arbiters to the players. Also, the players can help you, okay? Once you understand that you don't have to make a fuss when you think there is something suspicious going on, you will discreetly approach the organizer or the arbiter. And this is when it all happens. I think Laurent was very useful in telling you how things were dealt in Strasbourg. And this is a perfect example of cooperation. You get a strange photograph which triggers a number of behaviors. And this is exactly the kind of culture you need to have when you try to avoid cheating. So get your scanners, make sure you do scan players. You don't need to scan all the players. Also this, you don't have to have huge queues, okay? Because if you have huge queues, you just start round late, and this is undesirable. What you want to have is the perception in the players that they can be scanned anytime, especially when they come in. So you really have to do that, okay? You have to have the scanners, they have to be visible. It makes no sense to have a scanner and to hide it. And it makes no sense to have just one scanner. If you are an organizer, you do spend your odd 200 euro to secure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I personally have 4, okay? And that is most important. Why? Because the players feel protected. It also helps if you get cooperation from the top boards who let themselves be scanned during the game, okay? I know this is really, really problematic. Chess players live in an old era where the game is played recorded in stone. No longer, they have a choice. They can either decide they will never be disturbed during the game, or else they decide that the arbiter is in charge, and if he needs to scan you, he will scan you discreetly when it's according to his judgment during the game, by bringing as less havoc to his game as possible. So he goes to the bathroom. When he comes out of the bathroom or while he's going to just briefly scanning, a scan should take no more than 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It has to be done in an environment of trust. And this is up to the organizer to create this environment of trust. You have to explain. It's also up to the arbiter to remind the players that this can happen as, of course, not a routine thing, but it can happen. And it does help if you have friendly players who will allow scans. You know who they are. And this just helps other players to see that a professional agrees to a scan. We have a grandmaster in our commission. Actually, we have 2, Alex and I'm talking of absolute grandmasters, and Alex and Konstantin, and you bet they are very happy when they're scanned because they know they are doing it for them. It's protecting them. It's protecting chess, and they live out of chess. So no, Vera, they have the right to deny a scan. Yes, of course, you can never touch a player, never. It is his constitutional right to avoid a scan. But what they cannot do after that is they cannot continue to play chess because the arbiter simply says, well, your tournament is over, okay? So, but these things you have to know. The regulations have been in place since 2014, Vera. So actually, these things should be a piece of cake by now for all arbiters. You can never touch a player, okay? You have to ask his consent. He must consent. This is the game, okay? And he can also be barred from the tournament. It depends on the arbiter. It's up to you, okay? Now, since I have another slot, which is best practices for arbiters, I will ask Laurent and Nebojsa to take 14 minutes and to make it very, very close, because I really want the question and answer session to be there. So I
Nebojsa
will keep
already
here, and if you
intervened.
have any questions, please save them for later. I will be very happy to answer, okay? And also, please do remember that this is just an initial seminar. We are just touching on the topics, and as you can see, on every topic, we have a single seminar. For example, this part I've been addressing in 12 minutes could easily be dealt with in 3 hours or maybe a week. So don't think that we will provide you with all the answers. We're just giving you an overview of what we're doing, okay? So, oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I'll tell you later what was happening when I was not answering, because I would say it's almost moving, but I had good cause, trust me. So I have time. Thank you. I will go ahead for a few more minutes. So Laurent, do you need to talk, or is it just Nebojsa?
No, it's okay. Yeah, we covered the arbiters part already.
You covered the arbiters part. Okay. So from the organizers part, again, you remember that when I read the anti-cheating protection measures, I said that it's the organizer's duty to make sure that everything is there. So what must an arbiter do, an organizer do before? The organizer, first of all, if he has to ensure he's an anti-cheating specialist on his team, okay? The second thing is you have to make sure you comply with the provisions which say that you have to have at least one of the measures from the list. And this is generally, as I said, the scanner. The scanner is the most effective because the scanner has, of course, it can also detect. You have to learn how to use it. But most of all, it has a deterrent effect because you will tell the players that, yes, we are scanning when you get in. If you scan one every 3 and you have 9 rounds, you have chances of being scanned 3 times out of 9, which is fairly high chance, okay? Of course, what an organizer must also do, and Fide is working on this, they've been working on this forever, but hopefully sooner or later we will get there, is that there will be a day when Professor Regan's data will be accessible to most organizers, or at least to international organizers. When that happens, the organizer will have information about what is going on in his tournament, which means he will have those red bleeps saying, hello, this player is really performing very, very well, okay? Of course, mean is cheating. This just means that given the average, he's on the average. Now, generally, statistics says that if you are above average, you will revert to the mean at some point. But sometimes this slope doesn't happen. This slope just goes, instead of sloping, it goes up, 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 up. And that's when Sir Regan will start to say, bam, 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 bam. When this happens, what must the organizer do? Now, the organizer must not go to the player, grab him by his hair and tell him, you cheater, you come with me. This is not what you do. You discreetly inform your arbiter. Not all the arbiters. You discreetly inform the chief arbiter, and you discuss a strategy with the arbiter, which takes into account the specificity of the player and the specificities of the tournaments and the circumstances of the playing hall. You devise a plan and you increase your protection. What does that mean? That means that you discreetly, non-obtrusively start watching this player. Doesn't mean you go with a scanner and you start scanning him deep into his undies. This is not what you want to do. He must never know that you are checking him. He must feel perfectly comfortable because this player must just be having the tournament of his life. So you don't want to jeopardize this tournament. Mind you, just installing into a player the idea that you might be suspecting him will affect his player. Okay? So this is very important that you do this. And if you, at some point, your observations justify a scan, although David will never do this, I hope there will be arbiters there who do have the personality to go there. You have to scan them, because this is the only way you can protect your tournament. You have to scan them, and you have that asterisk, not you scan them immediately, and you always have to, this will be dealt with by the arbiter, of course, not by the organizer, but the arbiter and the organizer should always talk. It should be a concrete plan. It's an observation plan. I will, an example, has a player, I will give his name because he was perfectly sound. His name is Marco Codenotti. We were playing in Portomano. He scored a resounding Grandmaster norm. I think after round 6, the guy was performing like Carlsen. And he was 2400, so this was very, very suspicious. Well, we all knew him. He's a very nice guy. It was very strange, friends with most of us. We still treated him as a suspect cheater. So we increased the protection. We started informing the arbiters. The arbiters were watching his every move. And he was scanned while bathroom. He was coming in. At the end of the tournament, when he scored the GM norm, we told the audience that he had been suspected of cheating because he was playing so well that we really thought he was a cheater. And so we increased the protection. And Marco looked at us and said, never felt a thing. Well, this is exactly what you want. Under observation, the arbiters knew everything. We did check him. He never had, for a slight moment, just a suspect that we were going after him. But yes, we were going, okay? We were going. David, I get it. Yes, in the absence of suspicion, of course, we never scan. We don't do that generally. But when there is a suspicion, unfortunately, you also have to scan players who are not under suspicion, because if you only scan the player who is suspected, then the problem is he will know you're suspecting him, and you are just installing a buzz in his brains, and he's gone. He will lose his next game. You don't want to do that. So you have to tell the players that there will be routine scans. Whether you do them or not doesn't really matter, but they have to know that they can come, because otherwise what you're doing is you are telling that player that someone has been complaining on him. So from the organizer's point of view, you're simply wrecking your tournament, because what you're doing is you're going after a player who is having the tournament of his life, and then he will start thinking, instead of his next move, he will start going something like, I can't even play well because now these people think I cheat. Now, this is not something you want to install in a player's brain. And paranoid players are always there. It's none of our business if they're paranoid or not. We must not help the paranoia to come to the surface. And the way we do this is when we have suspicions over a player, we make a wide circle around him so that nobody knows who the suspected player is. We don't want everyone to start looking at a player like, yeah, he's the monster, because this is going to ruin your tournament. Now, I'm not talking this out of some theory. I'm not talking this out of, well, this is what, you know, we big scientists devised. I'm talking this in practice. This has been done in many tournaments, and I never had a single complaint. It is about the culture. If you foster a culture of chess and of trust. The players will not be affected if you make a small 10-second scan, a routine scan, once during the tournament, twice during the tournament. Of course, if you scan them 10 seconds, 5 times in a round, there's something wrong, okay? They should never perceive you are disturbing them. They should never perceive they are the object of special attention. And I think the only other thing I need to address is the online transmission. Because when you have online transmission, then you also have the plea of signaling from abroad. Now, yes, Jan, I completely agree with you. When you broadcast your games, the chances of someone outside coming with information to the player increases. Now, you'll be surprised at what I'm saying, but if you have a cheating team, you'll never catch them. It's very difficult. And I will tell you a personal story. I've had players who won very important tournaments, and I used to manage or coach them, and we went together at tournaments. And I used to go, and like every caring father, I was standing next to their boards and hoping for them to win discreetly. The opponent, yeah, that as soon as he blundered, I would be very happy. But yeah, this was kind of the thing that was happening. You know, you're the coach, you hope the other guy blunders and your guy wins. So I was in the Netherlands and it's cold outside. I have a coat, I have a hat. I do wear a hat sometimes because you see I have no hair, so it helps. And all of a sudden, I also wear a scarf. I realized that since I really fear cold, by putting on a jacket, by putting on a coat, by putting on a scarf, by putting on a hat or not, I could be signaling my player. It's as easy as this. You get a topical position, all of a sudden you go in the playing hall, which you never do, but you do go at that very moment. Your pupil knows that when he sees you, you have a message. And if you wear a hat, you are winning. If you don't wear a hat, you're losing. If you wear a scarf, it's a night. If you wear gloves and whatever. So when you broadcast games, security measures must improve. And you must take special attention to people who come and go from the playing hall. When someone goes out of the playing hall, you make sure that when he comes back, I'm talking about spectators, of course, I'm not talking players, the audience only can go out. But if he comes back in or she comes back in, you make sure one of your anti-cheating specialists goes with him and notices whether he's changed the way he's dressed or anything. If he takes different positions in the room, because that also can be a signal. You stand in this corner rather than you stand this corner. These people think they're very clever. Well, I tell you something, we're clever as well. As long as you know how it happens. This is the way it happens, okay? Stop thinking about James Bond. James Bond will fool you. He's not called James Bond for no reason. He's called James Bond because he will cheat. He's probably spent millions for devising, I don't know, some bionic eye he will sell to MI7. Okay, he's going to make money and he's just testing it on chess. So James Bond is not our problem. Our problem is the standard cheater, and standard cheaters do things the way I told you. They either have something with them or they have an accomplice, and the accomplice is going to communicate with him, most of the times in an analog way. Okay? And I think with this, I'm over, and we have 30 minutes, and you are very welcome to raise all questions you want, and I and my colleagues will try to come back with good questions. So maybe, may I also, if you want anyone in particular to answer the question, when you make the question, you just say, well, the question is for, and you'll get your reply from your intended member. Okay? I'm mute. No, Alex, this is too easy. You ask each question to someone. Come on, it's 3 questions. No, I think the manifestly unfounded, okay, I think Klaus will answer number 1. I think you can easily answer that, Klaus. That's mostly for you. You are our...
So in the moment, I don't see the question.
The question is, in the case of manifestly unfounded accusations, the player is suspended for 3 months or 6 months. Suspended from what? I'm not sure what the question is.
That's the question. Yes, it's part 5 of the anti-cheating regulations, manifestly unfounded accusations, and I did not go into details, but I can answer this question. If there is a complaint and it is found that complaint is manifestly unfounded, then first step, the complainant receives a warning by Fair Play Commission. The second time, it never occurred, but it can occur in the future. And the second time, within a period of 2 years, this complainant can be sanctioned by a suspension up to 3 months. It is meant suspensions for playing. If we want to strip him titles, or if we want to ban him being a coach or something like that, I think we have to go to the Ethics and Ethics Commission. And it's also written in Article 5 of the anti-cheating regulations, if this unfounded accusation was made especially in public, Facebook, for example, then 3 months for the first violation and 6 months to the next violation. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I knew you would really come up with a good answer on this. The 2 is very fast. Alex, we know what you know. Okay, so Fide keeps promising, and hopefully one day we will get it. Okay, I think that the COVID situation is helping us because we are moving online, and all of a sudden statistics is very important. Now let's get to the 3, which is important. You see, the question already bears the answer. In line 3 of your question, you have a fantastic English word, one of those words I really love, and that would be manfully. Yes, you have this hero, this arbiter who is showing strength, courage, braveness. Why don't we call him Braveheart? Yes, but no, this is where the problem lies. The problem lies in the culture. You see, the problem is that in Batumi still, the arbiters were going there manfully, feeling Rambo or, I don't know, the lone justice, Judge Dredd or whatever. But no, it's just a matter of being open to the players, telling them what is going on when nothing happens, not when they are stressed. You have to tell them before. You have to make everyone comfortable, okay? When this happens, trust me, I've really seen few people who oppose you. Of course, if you think you are disturbing him, if whatever a former world champion candidate says is more important than what the chief arbiter in the tournament thinks, well, then we have a problem. But if we start understanding that the organizer and the arbiter are necessary parts of the tournament, and they do act in the interest of players, and we are so honest and convinced about this that we pass this on to the players, trust me, there will be no problem. It depends on the top arbiter, on the chief arbiter. You get a chief arbiter who is completely convinced that what he's doing is good, that he's honest and he's helping the players. The regulations back him because it's in the regulations. Well, this is exactly what you want. Now, the last question is, has there been any consultations with players? Well, yes, let's consult the players. And probably you will probably learn that the players want to play on a golden chessboard with golden pieces. They want €1 million delivered in their bank account and whatever. But this is not what we're after. We're after making chess a fair place. So the point is that the regulations are there and the arbiters are meant to apply them, okay? We're not asking players whether they like to abide by the regulations. They just have to. This is the regulations, you follow them. And if the arbiter can scan you, he will. And if this, sorry, I know you're all adults here, if this pisses you off, it's your own problem. The arbiter is just doing what he needs to do. What we need to understand as arbiters and organizers is that the fact that we can do something doesn't mean we're doing it. And the fact that we can do something doesn't mean that we're doing it like we were boss. It's not we're boss. It's not we are Judge Dredd. It's this, we have to do it in the interest of protecting the tournament. We have to strike the balance between harassing the player this little tiny bit and protecting the tournament. A good arbiter will always strike a good balance. A bad arbiter will go wrong. Either he is wary of doing everything, so if he sees a 2,500 player, he's also, and if he sees Carlson, well, he'd rather go somewhere because they don't even want to talk to him. Or you get the other kind of guy who just attacks everyone because he can, so I'll just get a scanner and I'll just scan the rest of you. No, this is not what we want to do. We want to strike a balance. Okay, and I think Laurent can also add here from his own perspective, because I've seen him work and I know that he can do this well. Okay, Laurent, will you just add perspective on this? I think this is a critical point.
Yeah, basically it's always one of the key words in the laws of chess is using best judgment, as you just described. So I don't really know what you expect me to add to this, but yeah, there's one comment from Alex about consulting the players. Of course, I think it's important to have inputs, but at some point, when we speak about protecting the tournaments, there should be also some things which are not always 100% comfortable, but which are needed. So, yeah, of course, if we can implement measures which are at the same time comfortable and safe together, yeah, that's the ideal scenario. But in some cases, you can't have both components in the solution. So we need to compromise.
Yuri, here's Klaus. I want to add something. because this question from Alex is related to the Chess Olympiad 2016, where I have been anti-cheating officer, and also in 2018. First information, it was part of the specific regulations for the Olympiad that we will perform during the game short searches with a scanner. And second information, in both Olympiads together, I heard about not more than 5 complaints from players. Large majority accepted these searches, and some told me it's good that something is done to fight against cheating.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. This was actually perfect because you heard from someone who was on the field that what we call perception bias. Okay, you just get one player complaining, and in an Olympiad there are 2,000 players. 1,999 are okay with Klaus's work, but one complains, and then the perception bias says, all players are unhappy. But no, the actual truth you heard from Klaus. His work was well accepted. His team was, I remember, very, very well trained. They knew how to approach the player. And yes, occasionally I remember a few scrambles, but the scrambles were motivated by personal problems between the people, not because of the procedure. So Klaus knows intimately here that he is right. He gave this to his team, and the team brought it to the players. This is what you need to do. You do this, you have no trouble. If you fear every player coming up to you and saying, no, 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 you shouldn't because I am 2,800 and you don't do this to me, now then you have a problem, okay? You have to be convinced that what you're doing is right. You do it well, don't harass, don't boss, just questions.
Yeah, I probably also want to add something on this about the survey on players or something similar. Of course, in ideal world, we should not only have survey of players, but perhaps even social dialogue with kind of quasi-trade union. But, well, we are not football and we are not basketball. Even those sports just recently had something like that. So basically, we are not from the Mars or the moon. Konstantin Landa is in the team. He is and was a player. Also, Alex Solovich also is a player. I am a player. So we are not so far from the real world, and we can at least informally understand what is happening in players from the players' perspective. So. Of course, theoretically and ideally, we should have a survey, we should have researchers, both qualitative and quantitative, but okay, who will do that and who will pay for that? I can do that, but it would be a full-staff job as a researcher. So the world is not idle, and maybe we will do some surveys, why not? But for now, I think we can be trusted that we are not guiding parents and the players are just naughty kids. The ongoing interaction is on the stage, and we are not intimidating players. Okay, I will try just to answer what I see on the screen. If it happens that a player is caught red-handed but says nothing to see, are they still guilty? Wow, as far as I know, we didn't have such a case, but if we have a smoking gun, that is, if we have a telephone with a running chess program, I think CAN is not needed. It is very, very normal to ban a player for this without any statistical indication of cheating. And actually, at least in Lithuania, the scenario goes exactly like that. We, at least as far as I know, the youngsters are caught with their telephones in the toilet, and then they either confess or they are banned from the tournament, but it is no need then to go for CAN and ask for additional information. But of course, everything is just in the footsteps, and yeah, the practice is evolving. But basically, the smoking gun is the telephone with a running computer program, and ideally with the position from the game. But of course, it's just what we have, what we are dreaming of. It is not not what we have usually. Okay.
Maybe I can answer. Sorry.
Yeah. If Klaus wants to add, of course, welcome.
Oh, I fully agree, but I want to answer Vera's question. She's asking: suppose two players go to smoking room, how could we secure that they will not share information using everyday chat? I can give you an example again from the Chess Olympiad. We had an arbiter there. We had a lot of anti-cheating arbiters, and in Batumi we had 2 smoking areas, and both of them, one anti-cheating arbiter was standing. I know in an open tournament maybe you don't have the manpower, but that is one possibility to secure.
Okay, so can we get live questions? This is what we want. I mean, to go through the chat and find questions, it's almost impossible. So just come up with your question.
Well, until someone is raising question, I got one from the chat about contacting Ken Regan. What I usually do in sessions, or when people ask me in seminars about this system, which is not yet industrialized, I always tell the participants to go through your commission. I mean, I think it's always better that the Fair Play Commission is aware that there has been a scan requested, and that you can have a kind of alert to know that, oh, in this part of the world there is this going on, there is going that, and so on. So I don't know if it's something you wish to encourage until the proper tool is developed and you get some monitoring tools on your end, but I think it's good that you're informed.
As most times happen, and since you have vast experience in anti-cheating, having been a member of the commission in the past years, I find your suggestion very useful and the best way, because Professor Regan is overloaded and we don't want to go every single beep, and the members of the commission can have insight for the organizers. They can just tell them what to do even before we get to Professor Regan. Sometimes it's, you know, just a few small details, organizational or arbiter details, and this will solve them. Okay. If you have a player, you must also more or less know whether he is receiving information or whether having it, and any member of FPL will tell you how to address this. So question.
So may I say something more about this app that we would all like? I just don't know whether it's possible, because according to Ken's own papers, this would be an enormous enterprise, and I don't know whether money would even solve it.
We have, many years ago, Fide commissioned a study from my brother, who is a top IT specialist. And the study still stands. And from what I learned from people who understand IT, the whole architecture of the system remains unchanged, but before we could reach somewhere in between 15 and 17 depth with reasonable expenses, right now we're more from 20 to 22 because of the computing power. The cost of development would be around 100,000, more likely than not. And the running costs would be around 24,000 a year. It's peanuts, really peanuts.
So you wouldn't be using Ken's system, you'd be writing your own?
We would be using Ken's system, which would be the engine for a, would be the engine for an interface. What my brother did is he studied the interface and he said, well, if someone has to develop the interface, this is what he needs to do from the engineering side. Okay, and unfortunately, Fide never, we never got the money to ask anyone. Okay, once they have this analysis and Ken's requirements, it's done. All you need is pay for it and someone to develop it. But of course, as I said, the cost should be anywhere in between 60,000 and 100,000, and maintenance should be 24,000 a year. Okay, I must say that maintenance could be slightly more than that, but we will have to see when it's up and running. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Can I ask my question?
Of course you can.
I'm Shofer, and I was working with Klaus in Olympiad, and I also work in anti-cheating in some other tournaments, in at least 3 Fide events. And I would like to argue that, first of all, the anti-cheating device is not working properly for fast scanning, because every time that we tried in different tournaments to scan fast, it shows wrong signals. You can hide the mobile phone and give white signals, or you can have nothing and give it shows red signals if we do it very fast. This is one matter, so we always have to slow down the procedure of checking, and it helps us to have the right signals. I don't know if there is any research regarding devices, if they are working properly or not, but I was using that in the Olympiad, and it was giving wrong signals all the time for fast checking. And I also remember that there was other players that were complaining. Carson was very unhappy, Nakamura was unhappy, and these are the players that I saw by myself. So maybe they didn't express their attitude in public, but in reality, it is a distraction for players to search them during the game, and arbiters must make sure that we are not distracting players while their clock is running and we want to check them. And by the way, we don't get a wrong signal for that. So these are the points that I would like to mention, and thank you for your answer to my questions.
Okay, there's 2 answers here first. The first one is about the device. I know from Andy that the devices that have been used were not effective, so I think you just are right. They were not. I see, and they were just introduced without us knowing any from the former administration. And yes, I know that Andy tested them, and you're right, they don't work. So I think this is solved. Now, as to the players and disturbances, again, if you get, many of you might be familiar with former world champion Michail. Now, I'm pretty sure he used to play against players who were smoking. And he was not a smoker himself, and he trained. I think he was asking poor old Rogozhin to smoke against him, or I mean, he was playing with the radio to get used to that. Now, at some point, Fide said, no, you guys have to stop smoking. And I'm pretty sure there was rage from all the players who smoked. Oh, no, 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 this cannot happen. It will never happen. Then they introduced the electronic clocks. Ah, yeah. Oh, no, I don't want those. I don't want those because I like Zeitnote. You know, when I get in time scramble, I really get it a lot. And now this clock doesn't help me to get my adrenaline flowing. Every time you introduce a novelty, you get the older generation who doesn't like it, and you get some of the players who will complain. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Things change.
But it is not about being afraid. It is about laws of chess, that it is clearly written that we must not distract players. And it's about distraction, which is against laws of chess.
Apologies. This.
Yuri, may I?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, 3 remarks, sorry. First, it's true, this device's feeder board not worked properly, and it was part of my reports, both reports, and if you ask me, we should buy other devices, cheap devices maybe, not such sophisticated devices which are creating problems, so I agree. This are not is not a perfect solution. This device is from Fide. Second, I remember very well the situation when Carlsen and Nakamura were searched, but it was not that what we discussed before. They were searched after the game, and maybe they lost, maybe they only made a draw. I don't remember, and they were not in a good mood. That's what I can say. But it has nothing to do with searching during that game. And third point, I think if you read Laws of Chess, Article 11.3 very well, I think the arbiter has the power, even during the game, to search somebody.
This has been added after the Olympiad, right? This has been added to the Laws of Chess after the Olympiad.
No, I don't think so. It's Article 11.3.
I can remember it was after that.
The point is that the laws of chess should be written in should be read in an integrated manner. As I think Klaus will easily be able to tell you, the laws must be read one aside to the other, and there's also a hierarchy here. So we have to understand whether we want to keep chess in their golden cage and have everyone cheating, or we allow minor inconveniences and then make sure that everybody is playing chess and not following a computer.
I agree with you, and I would like to thank Klaus and you, especially that I worked with Klaus, and it was very helpful for me. I learned many things from him, and it was a great cooperation. But on the other hand, I think we shouldn't be more Catholic than Pope, and we should accept that. I mean, maybe many of you play chess as well, and during the game, it is a really distraction. When we are playing, we should imagine ourselves instead of players, and we ask them to be searched while the clock is running. It's just a big distraction. Please consider that.
Sure. Again, I have to be very strong here, very strong, and I want to be very strong. It's important that we all understand that we're not trying to be more Catholic than the Pope. We are trying to kill the virus. It's different. We're fighting for our survival. When we get to scan a player during a game, this is last resort. This is when we don't have other means, okay? And since we cannot scan individual players because this is when we are telling them that we suspect them to be cheating, we have to have random scans limited to a minimum when things go wrong, not all the time. And if players complain, it's fine. They will adapt. The dinosaurs did not adapt. They were wiped out of existence. Chess players will adapt. It's just normal that they will somehow complain at the beginning, and slowly they will get used to it. They won't bother. It doesn't really matter. Do you really think that Carlson can be bothered if someone scans him while he's going to the bathroom? He can't be bothered. He will just get the scan. If he knows it's happening, he goes, he gets scanned. It's 10 seconds. He knows, goes back and just plays and crushes his opponent as he always does. This is a question of mindset. If the arbiter has this mindset within himself, he will pass it on to the player, and the player will boss him. If the arbiter knows how to do it, he will do it well. The player will feel protected, and it's fine. We have to, it's culture. We have to change. Chess has changed dramatically in the last 30 years. Dramatically. Okay? So this is another change. It will happen. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have my video. Apologies for that. Okay. So really, you always have to strike a balance. I'm not saying you have to scan everyone. I'm not saying you have to always scan. There might be tournaments where you don't scan. Okay? If everything goes smooth, it's a pretty safe environment. And if we're talking, I don't know, a round robin with 12 players, you're not going to scan if the arbiter feels there's nothing. But then if you feel there's something midway into the tournament, the arbiter will start screening all the players. Why not? Why not? Yes, this is the only way we can protect our players. I mean, if you play online, you have by now accepted that you will have a camera planted to, wow, isn't this your privacy gone completely wrong? Look, if you take, you can know which books I read. Actually, these books I publish. But yeah, and I have a drawer open. Welcome to my drawer. Well, we all know these things now, but it's either you have a camera on you or you can't play. So things change.
Can I just say something here? I wasn't...
Hello, Marco Bied.
Yeah, oh,
hello.
Can I speak?
Yes, I will speak later.
Sorry, I wasn't going to say anything in response to Yuri, but I feel I must. I just want to make it absolutely clear that I'm not the only one. Every single member of the Grand Chess Tour Advisory Board is totally opposed to routine scanning during play. I have persuaded the board to accept every other aspect of the regulations introduced in Batumi other than that one. At the end of the day, we have to do what we think is right, as you yourself said, Yuri. And also, at the end of the day, this is all about submitting games for Fide rating. And if things are imposed on us that we don't like, we have the option of not submitting the games for Fide rating.
David, yes. I mean, we have seen example of this in the recent past. For example, in a few European countries where they thought that wearing a mask or social distancing was not too important, and the toll was very high. A lot of lives were given. It's the same in chess. We are facing a deadly opponent. We can either do what the authorities tell you to do and try to avoid the virus to kill us, or we can go our own way and do whatever we want. Yes, there's no way I can persuade you that the whole of Fide thinks things that are right or wrong. You do whatever you want, of course. But if you ask me, the thing is that we are facing a very deadly enemy, and we have to strike the balance where we will cause minor disturbance to the player and bring major benefits to chess. As I said, if the arbiter or the organizers are completely crazy and they want to boss you, I mean, I've been applying these things in my tournament forever, and I think Konstantin was in my tournaments. I don't think he ever felt any pressure on him, any whatsoever. And I think he's been scanned. I instruct the arbiters to do it in the least obtrusive way. Least. The arbiter will not come to you during the tense phases of the game. This is why you're an arbiter. You're good at it. You know when a player is tense. You won't do that then. It's, as I said, things evolve, and the arbiters need to be up to date. They are different. They're no longer the arbiters of the 90s and not even the arbiters of the 2010s. They are the arbiters of 2020, and it's completely different. And right now you have to understand what's going on the chessboard. You have to understand a bit about statistics. You have to understand a bit about crunching data. You have to have knowledge of electronics. Yes, this is scary, and this is not even the future. It's the present. Some can opt to live in the past, of course. It's not a problem.
You asked any of my Grand Chess Tour arbiters. Laurent's been one of them, though he may not have experienced much as some, how much time they've had to spend monitoring players during play because of possible concerns about cheating. It's very considerable. We somehow seem to manage without disturbing players during play by routine scans.
But that's also fine. I mean, it's not a problem if you manage without. This is exactly what I'm telling you. The problem is it has to be in the regulations, because if you need to resort to that, then you must go there. But if you can manage without, it's fine. I'm not saying you have to. I never said, I mean, I'm recorded. I never said you have to do it. I just said it has to be in the regulations, and when the time comes, you have to go there because this is last resort. I mean, maybe my English is not good enough.
Well, maybe I wasn't listening enough, but I remember we discussed this in Batumi, and there is a clause in our regulations that we have the right to scan a player during play. We have also said that routinely we will not exercise it. Right.
That's fine. I never said the opposite.
You know, with a small tournament, you could, in an extreme case, stop the tournament for a few minutes and scan all the players, and then the extreme doesn't fall on anybody. That's better, in my view, than scanning players a couple of times during the round when they go out to the toilet. But maybe the difference from our views is not as great as I thought it was.
Apologies. Can I also say something on that?
Of course, please.
Okay, thank you. We are discussing a lot about scanning players while playing, and we are taking as an example the Olympiad in Batumi, but I was there too, and I remember it clearly that we could scan players, but it was some kind of pointless, as players were scanned at the entrance, passing through frames. On the other side, we had a lot of people inside the playing venue allowed to use mobiles, for example, VIPs, or volunteers or personnel external to the organization, like press or press agents, operators, and so on, and no one could control them. So we are concentrating a lot on scanning players, and it is important, of course, but we are not discussing about something else, like players talking to other people during a tournament, and we have no control on what is happening on that. So it is important, of course, 1 second, please. It is important, of course, that we have the power to scan players, but when we have a situation where the players are scanned before the entrance, I think we should concentrate more on the fact that players are communicating, and the best way to cheat for them is just to having an accomplish instead of cheating with a...
Marco, I'm sorry, here, did you listen to what I said before. I
Yes,
started
also
out by
about the
saying
story.
exactly this. The point is, the best way for a cheater to cheat is to talk to someone else. Now, what happened in Batumi, everybody knows that Anti-Cheating Commission was not in charge. We were never in charge. We did not decide. We were not even called to inspect the venue. Of course, there were leaks. Klaus did whatever he could within the realm of the possibilities they gave him. If they had appointed the specialists to do this, what happened in Batumi would never have happened. Simply. It's because people in anti-cheating know these things. But you can't come here and say, well, we're not taking care of this, because if you talk to the FPL guys, they will tell you cheaters cheat by talking.
No, I'm not saying we are not taking care of that. I'm saying that we are paying a lot of attention on scanning, where probably that is not the biggest issue.
I agree. I agree. It's just because everybody's scared.
So why are we arguing if we agree?
Because the other guys are scared. And so if everybody agrees on the rest, there's nothing to talk about. We do argue on where people have different opinions, and people have different opinions on scanning and not on the fact that talking is dangerous.
I just want to say that we have different opinions on scanning, and I think we can have this. We can keep our different opinions because your argument is based on the current cheating that we should protect playing areas, and there are some potential cheating players that we might need to scan them during the game. But our argument is also based on laws of chess, which says arbiter must make sure that players are not distracted. So these are different opinions, and both are arguable.
What you're trying to tell us is that we have to change the laws of chess. We thought that arbiters would know better and would just understand that there is a provision. They don't have the right to disallow the regulations. The regulations are there. You have to apply them. You don't have to.
No, I mean, sorry,
maybe
this is a wrong point, because my point is that in the laws of chess, arbiters must make sure that players are not disturbed during the game. And scanning the players is a kind of distraction for them. So it contradicts laws of chess.
Okay, so it contradicts the laws of chess that if the clock doesn't work, the arbiter goes there and changes the clock, because he's clearly disturbing the player.
It's a different matter. It's not even comparable.
Why is it different?
Because they are stopping players that there is no problem in their games. And
it's exactly what you do when you scan. This is exactly what my analogy. When you scan the player, you are making sure that he can play chess in the proper environment. You see, it's a matter of understanding what we're trying to do. Chess is no longer the chess of the 90s. It's changing.
I just have a proposal. Maybe you can have a survey and ask players' opinion regarding that. It's very
no way.
Because they don't like to be scanned during the game and distracted, right?
If we made a survey between chess players in the 80s, asking them who wanted to play smoking, they would have won. The majority would have won. They wanted to smoke. This is not the way progress is made. Progress is made by understanding things and slowly changes. Now, as I repeat, I don't want to be misunderstood here. It's not that you want to scan. It's not that you have to scan. It's just that it has to be there in the regulations so that if need there be, you can scan. When we say that the arbiter and the organizer must devise a system, the system can also be, well, we will only use random scans if we have suspicions. This is a system. It doesn't mean that the system says every day we're scanning 150 people and whatever. In the Olympiads, it was deemed until now, for whatever reason, which is I'm not going to argue about, that it was necessary to have scans every day and whatever, and it was done. You maybe the next Olympiad they will put the FPL people to decide, and maybe there will be a difference. Maybe, I don't know. We have to see the venue, because you have to strike a balance between the risk and the opportunity. Okay, so you have to see the threats and the opportunities. You go there, you inspect, and then we decide. Okay, but of course, it has to be in the regulation. It has, then it doesn't mean you would. But on the other hand, if some of you are not prepared to do it, you are actually, if you're not prepared to apply the rules, you're not being a good arbiter. It's in the regulations, you have to do it, and if it happens, it's because you are protecting the tournament. It's your own judgment. Your own judgment. If David says that the tournament is not problematic, he doesn't need to make a scan. If he can manage the tournament without making scans, he's perfectly okay. He's doing the best possible work. We will advocate that. Yes, but on the other hand, if the situation requires random scans for whatever reason, if the random scan is your last and good resort, then by saying, I'm not going there, you're not being a good arbiter. Laurent?
Yeah, Nebojsa maybe can describe what they did in the candidates, because this is an alternate view which secures without being kind of intrusive like a scan. Nebojsa?
During the candidates tournament 2020 in Yekaterinburg, that is high-level event that required maximum level of protection. Only 8 players and very professional players. And according to the rules of the tournament, the deputy chief arbiter was in charge of anti-cheating. In Yekaterinburg, I saw before it was international arbiter Andy Hovey from Scotland and a member of the Fair Play Commission. And I have to say that we had a good, very good cooperation. And Andy has successfully done that job and on a very professional level. He was very kind to players. I think that is very important in that cases. And there must be a human approach. And he used the most modern equipment, handheld security metal detector with, I think, 1 million options. And plus, there is a walk-through metal detector behind the playing hall. And of course, 1 million cameras and something like that. And he also used device to scan the playing hall to see if there were any unauthorized signals in the playing area during the round. And of course, the players used the special pens to write. And when I say special, I mean very simple pens that were bought in NN bookstore. The pens with the tournament's logo were really very nice, but okay, we used the simple pens. I repeat, we had a very professional players, and but just in case, we must apply all anti-cheating measures. And Andy checked all the players before the start of the game, scanning them from the head to toe, and during the game he checked for any unauthorized signal in all the rooms where the players were moving. And when players leave the playing hall and go to restroom, we use the other metal detector to check always. And I think, yes, I'm sure he also sent all games in PGM format for screening with the Fide game screening tool. and what to say more. And at the technical conference, technical meeting, all players were introduced to the anti-cheating measures and what it expected of them in that area. And I have to repeat, everything was absolutely clear and correct. And I would like to thank the players again, Andy, of course, and the organizers for a job well done. And I sincerely believe that the tournament will continue soon and we will win Corona, I think.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you. It's really late. I understand two things. First of all, I would call the Arbiters Commission to have a meeting with FPL so we can discuss this in more detail, because I really understand that the issue is hot and has not been understood. For example, I get this very, why it's almost, but what's the for learning? Come on, Nick, my good friend, there are no punishment for not scanning because scanning is not obligatory. It's not mandatory. It's mandatory to have a scanner. It's not mandatory to scan. It becomes mandatory when the arbiter understands that he must use it. Then he must not refrain from using it because he believes otherwise. It's different. It's a completely different concept. And I really think, if I may, Laurent, that we should try to discuss and maybe make a seminar only on this, because the misunderstanding is so widespread. The fact that you have a nuclear bomb does not mean you will use it. It should never, although there are philosophers who will also tell you that the mere fact that something exists means that man will use it. Yes, of course, this is also true, but we must strike a balance. So maybe we have to just talk about this for 3 hours with everyone and get this straight, because the misunderstanding is too big and it's such a minor thing. I agree with Mark. It's minor. It's minor. You are focusing on a small detail in the wide framework of a system. As long as we can do it, it's fine. You don't do it, it's fine. You don't want to do it, it's wrong. The difference is small. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm saying you have to be prepared to do it. It's different. It's different, okay?
So you're not going to come to QC and say, these guys, they kept their scanner locked in the desk, it never came out for the whole tournament, don't rate it.
If they keep it in the locker, yes, because that's against the rules. If they have it out of the locker and it's not used, there's no problem, because it means that the organizer thinks he did everything he could to keep the tournament safe. But if the organizer doesn't have it, it should not be rated. If the players feel unsafe during the tournament and this, we might start seeing it. Okay, the problem is the perception of safety clear? Yes, no problem. No problem. But that's already different. Okay, so I don't know. I also like very much the comment from Salomeja. Scanning is still less intrusive than doping tests during the night or late evening. And then she adds, athletes do have a hard life everywhere. Yes, guys, chess players want to have it all too easy. It's nothing to be scanned if the circumstances require it. If the circumstances require it. And when an arbiter comes to me and says, if the circumstances require it, I will not do it, in my opinion, he has to be reported to the commission and he should be stripped of his title. because he has to be prepared to follow the regulations, even if he doesn't know. Okay? It's easy as that. You are not the lawmakers, you're not the policymakers, you're the arbiters. The policymakers is the Arbiters Commission, it's the Rules Commission, it's FPL, okay? If for whatever reason the circumstances require you to do it during the games, you will do it. Full stop. If it's necessary, you do it. It's not up to me to tell you when it's necessary, but if it's necessary and you don't do it, you're wrong. Okay, guys, it's 6:30. Maybe we will reconvene. And if you feel it's useful, you're right, Alex. Let's have a small round of how useful you thought this would be, and if we want to reconvene in September, whenever, if you think this has been useful. Maybe, yeah, just come up with, yeah, I see some nods, but many of you don't have your cameras on.
Yeah, it was useful.
Okay.
Yeah. Just briefly, if I may, in response to Yuri, I think it would be very useful to reconvene as and when there's a significant amount of OTB, over-the-board activity starting up again. But I'm inclined to think, I mean, as you yourself said, Klaus, at the moment we don't have anything in place for online events. And I would have thought over the next 2 to 3 months, addressing that issue was probably a higher priority.
Yeah, okay, that's different, yes. We're working on that, but that's a different topic. This was...
Yeah, I'm sure people are working on it, but, you know, don't intend any disrespect to anyone, but I'm not sure how useful going over this ground again would be until it becomes of more immediate relevance, whereas anything we can do about online is very useful indeed.
Klaus, just for you to know, you sent me a message in private which was intended for everyone.
Yes.
You realized?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good, okay. Just nothing too bad. Okay, so I will leave the floor to the chair because she has to close, and I think it's good that she gives the last word. If at times I was very, very strong, it's because I really want to push this thing. It is not against the law to scan a player. It is, according to the arbiter's judgment, there are situations where it may become necessary. When it becomes necessary, you are only a good arbiter if you do it. Don't come with your mindset on, I will not do it. You have to try to avoid doing it. This is okay. Saying I won't is wrong. And now, Salomeja for hellos and wrapping up.
Okay, thank you really for you all, for your attention, for your listening, and also it was not an easy evening. In Lithuania it's 7:30, in other countries it might be even later, and I am sorry I myself was away for 10 minutes or even more, but in any case it was useful for me, and wow, okay, it's night, it's night already. So it was useful for me, even if I am in the ACC and later FPL since 2014, I myself learned a lot during this webinar. So firstly, I think it's very good to have such initiatives for educational purposes as such. We get to know regulations, we get to know our jurisprudence, we get to know each other, and that is how the culture of trust is built. Within our chat, we see that to be transparent, to be open, even to be open to mistakes, might lead to better understanding, to better communication, and that is how the trust is built, and that is how the fair play might be built. Personally, I think we have to be very subtle and very aware that we are really often are dealing with not easy cases, and often the law is not a panacea, and law is not enough while deciding whether it is the last resort to scan, or it is still not this last resort to scan. So basically intuition plays a role, experience plays a role, and of course the knowledge plays a role. At least during these seminars we will build some knowledge bank. We cannot build experience and we cannot build intuition. It is up to each and every arbiter to decide when to apply these last resort measures. Of course, basically, even without any experience as an arbiter, I would never apply scanning during time trouble. But if it is not time trouble, I would not be so reluctant to do it, especially if I, so to say, smell a rat. And when we smell this rat, it is upon our heads and hearts. And I hope that we will not be too much intrusive, but at the same time, we would not be too lax and too flexible. So in any case, I would really like to thank you for maybe the most emotional in doing this, but he is the flagman of this anti-cheating, and being a flagman is not easy, and sometimes it gets emotional, but without emotions it's hard to go forward. So yes, in any case, if someone wants to tell something, I think we can devote 1 or 2 minutes, but basically I would like to rest already and then probably all of you. So I want to thank and say goodbye, and hopefully it is not the last chance to see each other. No one is speaking. Yes, from Malaysia someone writes. Okay. Okay, Klaus is rapping. Okay, basically, then you can follow us on our website, also on our Facebook page. It is still very young and not much is put over there, but in any case, you could even, for example, get more. We could get more likes. It would be useful for us. So, oh, link on Facebook. Okay, Bojana made a link, not on Facebook, but on Facebook we are a Fair Play Commission, and that's it. Okay, I will take myself Fair Play Commission, and here it is. Yes, here it is. Maybe we will be more active, because for now we actually didn't know what to publish there. Of course, our investigative chamber reports had to be confidential. That's why we are a bit laconic in our websites. But in any case, maybe we will publish some in the educational material. So I think I will just say goodbye and leave the meeting.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe wherever you are.
Thank you. Thank you for all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.